Good morning. I'm EZRAH and this is the Manila Times. A study has confirmed the presence of an emerging menace that is microplastics in the country's largest lake, Laguna de Bay. Sampling stations on the lake's surface were placed, which confirmed the presence of 100 microplastics in Metro Manila's largest water source. Mayor Rufi Biazon earlier warned of a potential water supply cut if the worsening pollution in the lake remains unresolved, especially now that the country braces for El Nino. Laguna Lake faces deteriorating water quality from industrial pollutants in excessive fish feeds and now microplastics. Joining us is the author of the first documented study of evidence of microplastics in Laguna de Bay, Assistant Professor at Mindanao State University, Bataraza, Palawan, Cris Loui Arcadio, along with Department of Science and Technology DOST Balik scientist and MSU Iligan State University professor Dr. Hernando Bacosa. Welcome to the Manila Times. Tell us about this study in Laguna Lake and how bad is microplastics pollution in the country's largest pool?
So we know that Laguna Lake or Laguna de Bay is the largest freshwater body in the Philippines, and it's very important economically. And of course, it's also a major source of fresh water for Metro Manila and Region 4. And of course, a major source of fish supply. And the motivation of this study is to determine the level of microplastics in Laguna Lake. And we know that microplastics is an emerging pollutant in different environments, including atmospheric environment, terrestrial, marine, and this time freshwater.
Yes, Professor Cris, tell us about your findings and how much microplastics have you found in Laguna de Bay?
Basically, the idea of having Laguna Lake as our sampling area is because, again, as mentioned, and it is the largest freshwater lake in the Philippines. And if we go into our data, there is a limited data on microplastics, especially in freshwater environments. So with that, we went to Laguna and established there 10 sampling sites for which we get our water samples. So after that, we analyzed and we were able to extract about 100 microplastics. So we examined the morphological characteristics of it. Majority of the microplastics that was found in Laguna Lake was fibers, and then there were all blue colors. And apart from that, we also dig into the chemical composition of the microplastic found, for us to know or to trace the source of these plastics. So we were able to determine 11 polymer types. There were PVC, polyethylene, but the most common is the polypropylene. Now, this polypropylene is the ones being used in making plastic bags, containers, and just recently, we were able to find out that 20% of these commercially available face masks that was used during pandemic were made from polypropylene. So it can be taken into account that these face masks can also be one of the sources of those microplastics found in the surface water of Laguna Lake. And also, our data is limited only to the surface water. So it does not include the water column and even the sediments. Now, as of now, we cannot really say how bad it is because as of the moment, there is no parameter that would really suggest or really tell us how bad it is. But what we are sure about is that these microplastics should not be in our bodies of water, and we just cannot wait for these numbers to double in due time for us to take actions on it.
Oh no, the West Bay, that's the one, like located in Metro Manila side, has the highest concentration of microplastic, an average of 20 microplastics per cubic meter, whereas the Central Bay, the Eastern Bay, and the Southern Bay are about 10 microplastic per cubic meter. So this is consistent that, the one with the highest or higher economic activity, the one with more industries and the one with higher population density are expected to have higher concentration of microplastics.
Dr. Mayor Rufy Biazon said that Laguna Lake's deteriorating water quality is due to industrial pollutants and excessive fish feeds. And now, on top of this, we have to contend with microplastics. Sir, tell us about the health hazards of ingesting microplastics through the water.
So there are, I think I have mentioned in my previous interview on atmospheric microplastics. So once microplastics enter the human body, they can cause oxidative stress in our cells. So when the cells are stressed, they cannot function normally and they cannot actually detoxify. And that could lead to inflammation in the long run and abnormal function of our organs. Also, it was already found by a study that the smaller plastics known as nanoplastics can penetrate our organs and can be found in fetus and in blood. And when it comes to indirect effects, so microplastics could be a carrier. They could be a vector of other pollutants. It can be a vector of harmful bacteria in water, viruses, heavy metals, including lead, mercury, shall we say arsenic, chromium, and organic pollutants such as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Then you have pesticides and PCBs. So if these plastics can carry this biological and chemical contaminants, that could further aggravate its effect on human health. And of course, microplastics has also effects on the fish population. The same with the human body, microplastics can also affect the fish physiologically. It could hamper, the normal function of the fish. They could actually block, the digestive system of the fish, making it not so efficient in digesting its food. And the higher concentration of microplastics of the fish can cause, sublethal effects on especially for smaller fishes or larval fishes. And aside from that, microplastics can also bioaccumulate in the food chain. Microplastics can be taken in by zooplankton, and zooplankton can be eaten by larval fishes, and we know that smaller fishes could be consumed by bigger fishes. So it could accumulate in bigger fishes, and finally, we humans can take them in.
Just to add to what have been said by Doc Hernan, actually the impact of microplastics has yet to be determined, but it has been an emerging focus on ongoing studies. Kasi the toxicity of these microplastics really depends on how much is consumed. And also there are microplastics as mentioned, smaller microplastics. These microplastics can also penetrate to human tissues and again could cause oxidative stress to humans and organs.
Regarding that, Professor Cris, so do you plan on conducting this study yearly or again? Because I remember you mentioned that the sampling was conducted in February of 2022, and that was a year ago. And I'm assuming more pollution has been done. Some other studies said that more pollution was done during 2022, and it's been a year after that. So are you going to be conducting this study again?
Yeah, if given the chance, I will again conduct the study just to have the differentiate whether or not we have contained or we have doubled the number this time. And I think that's one avenue also for us to be able to give shall we say policies on how do we take good care of these emerging threats. I think the majority of the public does not know the physical and chemical properties of microplastics, though although the public may realize that plastics have a negative impact on ecological environment, but they may underestimate that impact. Most people buy plastics because of convenience, simply because they forgot to bring they forgot to bring shopping bags. So again, I think one of the reasons I think is that we underestimate the impact of this, because of course micro and up until now, we don't even see that effect as of now.
Dr. Hernan, Laguna Lake is the major source of Metro Manila's potable water. How do you think the issue of microplastics will affect the water supply, especially now that there is an impending drought or El Nino?
Yeah, so when we say El Nino, that's a prolonged drought. And then there is a higher surface temperature, higher evaporation of water, warmer water. During El Nino, there is a possibility that the microplastics could, enhance the growth of more microalgae that could lead to more algal bloom. And we know that more algal bloom could lead to more fish kill. And that's really alarming. That's something that we need to study.
Okay, so a question for you both. We already know that microplastics is bad and it's a worsening situation. It's a growing issue. So for Professor Cris and Dr. Hernan, what do you think can a regular citizen do to reduce microplastics or plastics pollution?
Yeah, basically the root cause of all these problems is basically plastic. So it may hard to believe, but I think the very first thing that a normal citizen can do is really divert the attention of using plastic into a more, shall we say, biodegradable things, so that we will be able to reduce this impact that we are experiencing right now.
That's really, as I mentioned, plastic is really one of the most challenging problem of our generation. And I've said in my previous interview that this is almost equivalent to like a problem of global warming. And I think globally, we need a global treaty like that of global warming to on how we can address microplastic and plastic pollution at a global level. So there must be, shall we say, a legally binding agreement at an international level on how can we reduce, how can we manage, and how can we chart our future when it comes to plastic pollution and plastic usage. And then going back at the national and local level, I mean, the root cause of all these problems are human being, especially we are notorious in the world. The Philippines is the third biggest polluter of plastics into the marine environment after China and Indonesia. And we are the biggest contributor of plastics coming from river or riverine plastics in the world. And Pasig River is the biggest, contributing 4% of the total riverine plastic emission. So the problem is the disposal. We have plastic, but we Filipinos, on how we manage, we dispose of our plastics everywhere indiscriminately. So I think it's high time that we have to think on how we manage, on how we use our plastics. And at the level of our local government units, which is responsible for collection of the trash, we need to improve our ability to collect, like plastics from our communities and dispose them properly in our sanitary landfill. And of course, for the companies, I think we have to hold companies liable for the final destination of the products that they manufacture. It's quite complex, but I think we can.
All right, so we must look for more sustainable solutions in order to solve these problems with microplastics. Thank you so much for your insights. Dr. Hernando Bacosa, professor of MSU Iligan State University and DOST Balik scientist, along with Professor Cris Loui Arcadio, the author of the study of microplastics in Laguna de Bay. Thank you so much for your time.